All right, everyone. Let's begin the second tutorial in this series. In the last one, I believe we had discussed two important case studies. First was the Guantanamo Bay case study, and the second case study was the rights of citizens in Saudi Arabia. And I told you that in the third installment over here, in this part, I mean the second installment in the tutorial series, we would be looking at the ethnic massacre in a place called Kosovo and what was the cause behind it, what were the repercussions, and all that. We will have a look. So, for that, I'm going to share my screen with you all. Great, I hope it is visible. And let us begin. Citizens' rights we have already covered. Great. The case study of the ethnic massacre in Kosovo. We need to understand something that so Yugoslavia is, or rather was, a nation that existed on the world map in 1991. Before it rather it, if, I don't know if bifurcated is a right word or not, but it got divided or split into multiple nations, right, including Slovenia, including Bosnia, right, lots of tiny nations in Eastern Europe, right. Now let's come back. So before Yugoslavia was split in 1991, there was a tiny state in Yugoslavia, or a province called Kosovo. Right. Now you need to understand the demographic of this country. Okay. Please try and understand what this country looks like. Now, if you look at the country in general from a bird's eye view, from the top, the country will appear to have a majority Serb population, as in from Serbia, Serbs, right? Right. The Serbs were in majority in population. लेकिन अगर आप थोड़ा सा जूम इन करके कोसोवो को देखोगे, if you look at Kosovo was this tiny little place where the population was majoritarily Albanian, from Albania, right? Now they're ethnic Albanians, right? So already you can see that this is a great masala for a ethnic conflict, because there are two ethnicities here. There are the Serbs, which are ethnicity number one, and then there are the ethnic Albanians, which are ethnicity number two. Right. So now, obviously, I think you are already knowing what is going to happen. So you need to understand that Yugoslavia was a democratic country. Now, this is in stark contrast to Saudi, where democracy ka duh is also not there. ठीक है? There is no democracy ka duh also in Saudi. Over here, lekin the only difference is that this is a democratically inclined nation. Sorry, where elections happen on a time to time basis. And now, during one of these elections, there was this Serb nationalist leader. He was of Serbian origin rather. Extremely narrow minded, extremely cunning, shrewd, dirty person essentially. And his name was Milosevic. Milosevic, he won the elections and he was elected to power in Yugoslavia. So it obviously now goes without saying he is from a Serb background. So obviously he did not like the sight of the ethnic Albanians, of the Kosovo Albanians, right? And his agenda was that the Serbs should dominate the nation while we should get rid of these Albanians. Very similar to what Hitler felt, by the way. See, again, you need to understand history repeats itself, right? That is why we learn this. We learn history. Now we are trying to integrate history with political science, because I want you to use your understanding of what Hitler had done to the Jews. He had a similar philosophy that we need to drive this community out somehow, right? And of course, he was not as radical as Hitler. His opinion was that either they have to leave the country, right, or they have to accept the dominance of the Serbs. They have to accept them as the majority, and that they will have to live under the rule of the Serb majority in Yugoslavia. Right. So Milosevic, being the atrocious person that he was, he ordered the Yugoslavian army to openly massacre in broad daylight public massacre, right? The ethnic Albanians. So the army of the nation carried out open massacres, right, on Milosevic's orders. Now you need to understand this massacre that is being carried out by an army of a democratic nation is doing so on the orders of a leader who is also democratically elected, who has come to power through a democratic mechanism called the elections, where everyone is given the right to vote based on universal adult franchise. Right. So he is doing, the army is doing all of this on the orders of such a human being. Are you able to follow my instructions? Right. Are you able to understand the words coming out of my mouth? Right. So this is a very distinct problem because here we usually state that democracy is the solution to all the problems, and once we have a democratic nation in place, such issues will not crop up. Yugoslavia is a glowing example of the problems that can happen in a democratically elected nation, right? Because Milosevic didn't come to power; he's not a dictator. He has come to power democratically, and that is the biggest problem, right? And of course, there was a lot of this called ethnic massacre. It's genocide. And you are aware of the word genocide, in which we systematically wipe out community, cleanse a community, right, of the map itself of a nation, right? And it was one of the worst instances of killing that was recorded in recent times, particularly in Eastern Europe, which is otherwise generally very volatile also. However, then the United Nations intervened eventually, and a lot of people got behind Milosevic, and they ousted him out of power. They're like, get out. They brought an end to his so-called democratically elected government. Of course, he was tried by the International Court of Justice, right, in Prague, in Hague. Sorry, not in Prague, in Hague, right, the International Court of Justice for crimes against humanity. Right. So again, this is very interesting. I'll obviously this is a very short case study. This is what again you need to understand. Democratically elected guy not allowing access to democratic rights to his own citizens, and not just that, not is he just suppressing them, he is also violating the constitution of the nation, and he is also ethnically cleansing, ethnically killing, wiping out an entire community of Kosovo ethnic Albanians. Right? I hope you get this because I would like you all to have a very thorough understanding of these case studies before we move on to our next segment, which would be our understanding of rights itself. So do reach out in case there are any queries, and thank you and good evening.